Yo, what's going on, guys? Hope everybody's having a great day today and happy holidays. So, in today's video, I just wanted to show you guys a full stack roadmap for 2026. If you're looking to become a full stack developer in the year of 2026, and you need to figure out where to start first, understanding the fundamentals, building projects, and looking at different tools that could help you with full stack development, this is the roadmap for you. All right. So I put together something very simple that has helped me transition into becoming a full stack developer uh, like 4 or 5 years back. Okay. Because at first I was just a front end software engineer and I already had some back end experience. And once I got into like the software space with using React and how we were building things with using C Sharp, Python, Node, I figured, you know what, let me just learn these backend tools so that I could easily build out an application without any help whatsoever. Now, you don't have to follow the quarter format. I just figured, depending on if you're working another job and you're just doing this on the side, having realistic expectations in terms of how you're going to learn the fundamentals of each individual category, it might take you 3 months, or it might take you more than 3 months, or it might be less, but at least giving you a rough blueprint of what you need to do first to get you into that full stack mindset is going to help you not only get a job as a full stack developer, but then also hit the ground running immediately because you've already done the work. All you have to do is execute at this point. So, here we have four different categories, and I'm going to zoom in on each individual quarter or fundamental for each of these and explain exactly what you need to learn. Okay. So you got front end fundamentals, you got the back end, you have cloud DevOps, and you also got system projects and interviews. The first thing that we're going to be focusing on here is the front end fundamentals. This is the essentials of whatever website that you're looking at today and any web application that you use on your mobile device. If you were to go on the browser and search up a website, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript runs that. Okay. So you need to focus on those three languages. Very simple. You don't really have to spend too much time on it, but understanding the basics of what HTML is, why it's being used, why you need CSS, and then also how you can use JavaScript to enhance the functionality of your website to do a lot of great things will help you understanding how a website functions in general. And there's a lot more to how a website functions depending on third party applications that it's using, how we're tracking metrics for that website, how you're engaging with the website. There's so many different ways to go about this. But the main thing I would just want to tell you guys is understanding the languages that make up a website. So HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are your go-to for front-end development. I would highly suggest that you understand Flex and Grid, the difference between Flex and Grid. How is that being used in CSS to create the layouts that you want for a website? Once you understand both of these and use them as examples for your own projects, then look at responsive web design. Every single website that is out there today is using a responsive layout. So if you think about a website that looks good on desktop and then you were to look at it on your phone and everything is pretty much in a better format for mobile, like it's optimized for mobile, it's optimized for tablet, that is responsive web design, that is responsive layouts. So you have to make sure that all your projects are responsive. If it's not, that shows that you don't know the fundamentals and that you can't really build a modern website today. So please make sure that you learn these. Very important today. Also, accessibility basics, right? How are people accessing the website? If someone is blind, how do they access the website? Are you going to have voice on your website to where people can actually understand what the website is about, how to navigate it, all that stuff? You need to make sure that your website is nice, it's clean, and it's easy to navigate. If you don't have that and it's too complex, you're going to have a lot of drop off. And a lot of people are going to get confused in terms of what your website is about. Then once you understand that, I would say about like 2 to 3 weeks on this is enough. Okay. Once you understand that, then look into web application building. And one of the most popular languages that is out there right now for web application building is React JS. Okay, so React allows you to create modern web applications super easy. It doesn't require you to write a bunch of code. You can actually reuse a lot of the code. You could use their state management patterns to capture the state of what users are doing on your website to perform an action. You could show data on the website depending on what's toggled and what's not toggled. Reusable components is very important too when you want to talk about not reusing the same code every single time. You could just create a component that has the same code in it. And then say if you want to change the behavior of that code, you could actually pass in properties that would allow you to change the look and feel of that component too. It's very powerful stuff. Also data fetching. Very important. So you'll get into data fetching when you start to understand more about APIs and that architecture. But using data fetching using Stack query, which allows you to easily fetch data, update data, create mutations around what you want on the back end, and have the proper state to understand whether the data is being fetched, whether the method was executed correctly. All that stuff is baked into TanStack query. Also, once you understand the basics of React, I highly suggest that you understand TypeScript. Okay, so basically, when you're writing in TypeScript, you're typing every single data point of your application, any data object that you're pulling in from your application that you're going to be sending out to your API for updating data that's already in the database or creating it. Okay. So when you do this, you understand exactly what kind of types you're dealing with. So if you're dealing with a data object that has strings, numbers, Boolean values, it has another object in it with strings, numbers, and Booleans, you could create different types to define exactly what that is. Also, if you had magic numbers in your database, right? And if you don't understand the magic numbers and what that is, I'll have an annotation on the video where you could click that. You can go into, I did a tutorial on magic numbers, how that could be messy for your code. So you don't want to make that mistake. But with magic numbers, you could use enum types within TypeScript to define what those numbers are. Last thing you want to work on is testing, right? I never really did unit testing until recently, and I think unit testing is very important. Okay, so understanding v-tests and jest, how to set up tests for your components for whatever feature that you're building for your app, and make sure that feature is actually working as intended. So you could give it mock data, you could go through different scenarios, testing scenarios, to help you test whether that feature is actually working properly or not. Okay. And then based on the tests that fail, you can make adjustments to that test. You can make adjustments to the code so that the tests actually pass, and you should be good to go. All right, and it will save you a lot of time and headache when it comes to debugging your application too. The last thing for front end fundamentals is branching strategy. All right, using Git to commit your changes to your GitHub account. I would get familiar with just committing changes to a branch, whether that's your master branch or not. Commit changes, setting up a message for those commits, describing exactly what those changes are, and then also the different commit commands that you could do, like cherry picking, get a history of what you committed and the hash values of those commits, and just kind of looking at how to, when you're running into different problems with, pulling down the master branch and trying to get your branches up to date, you could run into merge conflicts if you had outdated changes. And you want to just make sure that you understand how to run through those commands correctly. All right. So I didn't want to list all those commands out. I will leave that to you. And if you really don't want to go through Google and research and everything, obviously you can use AI to help you with that. But don't have AI give you the full answer and not give you any context of what that answer is. So using AI to help you with just understanding exactly what code is written, how to run through some certain commands using Git. The best way to go about branching strategy is going to help you understand those fundamentals a lot quicker. Okay. I implore you guys to use AI whenever you can. And if you're doing it on your own, obviously use it as a coding assistant for you. Also, when you're writing your code, use it to help you review your code, right? Understand exactly what the fundamentals are. You get prompted to act as a senior software engineer or a senior developer that specializes in full stack. and look at the code that you're writing, and then it gives you highlights of what is good, that you're doing exceptionally well, and then what you need to work on too. So you can have AI kind of help you with those coding exercises, or you could just do it and just run blind with it, and then have someone else like review your code. You can have me review your code too if you want to. I mean, there's going to be a link in the description for you guys to do all that stuff. If you're ready for that, just let me know. Right? Just figured I'd throw that out there. So once you finish with the front end fundamental, like I said, January to March, right? It could be quicker than that. Then you want to focus on the back end fundamentals, right? The back end is where anything that's being done on the front end gets processed on the back end, and that data gets stored somewhere. Okay. So the fundamentals of back end is databases, API architecture, and CRUD operations. All right. So in this case, you need to understand what a relational database is. What is a graph database? If you wanted to use GraphQL for your APIs, then understand what a graph database is. Also, cloud architecture. How can you send data up to the cloud for processing so that it gets stored in the database, or maybe data gets deleted or created, whatever you prefer, and whatever your application is going to be doing. All right. So my recommendation to you is to learn Node, Python, or GraphQL. Node is a good JavaScript backend. It works in tandem with React. So this might help you with understanding the basics of both. If you wanted to just have something that's purely different and you wanted to challenge yourself, obviously you could use Python and then create some CRUD operations around updating your database for certain data types. Once you understand that, then your API architecture is going to be very important too. So the only way to do those operations is with an API architecture. You could use Axios in React to help you with this, just to kind of get everything set up. And once you have that already put together for creating data, updating data, and all that stuff, you can understand exactly what's going on in your database and how to do it. So you could create different ways of updating that data for that particular database using update statements, insert statements, deletes, and really understand exactly how powerful those statements are. Then once you understand that, then the database fundamentals of how a database table works is very important. So when you have a database, there's so many different ways you could have a database structured out. All right. I'm a big fan of relational databases because you could relate different tables to each other based on a foreign key. And it just ties the data together so you get the bigger picture of what you're trying to look at or what you're trying to accomplish. So look at foreign keys and primary keys, right? A foreign key is basically a key that relates to another table that is dependent on that one table. All right. The primary keys of any table is just an auto incremented ID that is going to be used to reference a row within that table itself. And then table joins, you could do an inner join, outer join, right outer join, left outer join. It doesn't matter, all right? Just understand what those joins means, why you should use joins, and just like I said in the beginning, foreign keys, right? That might be a clue there, all right? Indexing, why is that important? When you have over a million something rows in your database table, why having an index on your table is crucial for performance. And then different column types, right? You got your integer column types, you got your varchar column types, text, bit, boolean, whatever database table that you're building, it should follow those patterns. You should understand those patterns. It's very important. And then the last thing for backend is auth basics, right? Auth and IAM, Identity Access Manager principles. So you need to understand JSON web tokens. What is that used for? Why is that so important? So when a user logs into a website, why do you create a JSON web token? Sessions, why is that important? When can you end a session for a user versus when you could keep a session alive? And then OAuth basics. How is a user going to be authenticated to your system? You need to understand that the fundamentals of that layer so that when people are logging into your website, you have steps that the user will go through in terms of authenticating that validating that the account actually exists, that it's a valid account that should have access to whatever it needs to have access to. If it shouldn't have access to particular areas of your web app, that you're handling that accordingly using IAM. All right. So understanding that is going to help you build out a pretty clean application. The front end fundamentals and the back end fundamentals is going to help you tremendously there. All right. And then once you understand that, you have your cloud and DevOps. So a lot of companies will have this already set up, and it just kind of streamlines the whole process with software development and the ecosystem of what is software development. All right. So if you're using AWS, right, a lot of companies use AWS to streamline this process. So you can use AWS for a lot of different things. I have a couple of examples here that I'll briefly talk about, but AppSync, right? If you wanted to sync data from a third-party application, AppSync might help with that. Using Lambdas to run through like basic computation or basic logic. Typically, I've seen when using Lambdas, you could use it for data ingestion. You could use it for your API layer. It depends on what you want to do, right? You could create all those connections if you want to. You could play around how Lambda should work with API gateway and all that. S3 bucket. So how are you storing files? If you're building an app that allows you to upload files, you can use AWS S3 to allow you to do that. EC2 instances. So like if you wanted to have two separate virtual machines running, one for data science and another for just your front end and your cloud front, that's something that you would look into. SQS when you're dealing with message queues and code pipelines, right? So when you're checking in changes, so if you're committing changes to Git, you could probably kick off a AWS code pipeline, right? Not necessarily you need to go to AWS route for this when you have GitHub Actions and all that stuff too. I mean, I would use GitHub Actions obviously if I'm using Git, but if you wanted to use code pipelines within AWS, that's totally up to you. And then Terraform. This is how you create a infrastructure as code setup. So if you think about having your own project separate, like your own, you create a branch, right? And you have a full copy of what your project is in that branch, and you could run it locally within your infrastructure. You won't be using a shared website for everything, right? Like everything will just be isolated. So having an infrastructure as code to where everything that you're making changes to gets built throughout the pipeline, so you don't have to manually deal with that is crucial. So if you wanted to look into how that's set up, I highly suggest you do that. That's going to help you with just understanding what that means. Using Terraform to set up your infrastructure as code, very important. And then also CI/CD pipelines, right? How is that already set up? And then once you have all these different tools set up and you understand the fundamentals of these tools, logging and metrics. Why is this important? When you think about when you're running these third party tools in parallel with each other to do different things, you need to have logging and metrics already done for you. You need to have that enabled to understand exactly what's going on with each individual tool. If there's any errors that happens, you should be able to log that out, debug it, and figure out what's going on. Then, based on what kind of data that you're trying to process and something's amiss somewhere, you could then make updates and do whatever you need to do, right? So, this is very important to any company or project that is dealing with logins of users using it every day. You want to understand exactly what's going on behind the scenes. All right. So once you understand the cloud and DevOps side of everything, then you could start looking into like system design, how a system is actually architected. Now, with this, you don't have to wait till the last minute to do this. Okay. Once you get comfortable with all three of these concepts here, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to take you a whole year to get it done. But depending on like how bad you want it, it might take you 3 months just to get everything on this list done for you, right? Get the fundamentals and all that stuff. All it is repetition at the end of the day. But the biggest thing is as you're building your projects out, as you're building the stuff out, start building out your portfolio as well. Start adding projects to it, right? And have your projects deployed easily using Vercel. You can use just look up how to deploy your own web app. Once you're done coding and you figured out what your project scope is going to be, and you built out that project and you keep iterating and building off that, deploy that project out, have it accessed via like a link, and make sure that it functions correctly. And once it's functioning properly, add it to your portfolio. Start building that out, right? You could use Claude Code to build out your portfolio. Just give it an idea and just give it context of what you want built and just have it give you the blueprint of what that portfolio would look like. Once you have that already set up, then put all your projects onto that portfolio and have all your projects just running on that page. The biggest thing that you need to understand here is actually recording demos of your projects. So say for example something was to go awry on one of your projects, like you haven't updated it in years, right? Or even months for that matter. And a recruiter was to go through, look at your resume, look at your portfolio and all that stuff, and they were to look at one of your projects and it's not working. Having a recorded demo of how that project actually worked actually saves you in this case. And it actually shows that you have knowledge of what you've built. Because one thing I don't want you guys to do is just rely on AI to help you build out these projects. And then once you're done with one project, you deploy it. That's it. It is what it is. But once you go back to it, you don't really understand exactly what the scope of the project was, how to build it, what kind of tools you used in React to build it, or if you were to use like different third-party libraries to kind of build it out. You don't really know. You have to understand how a project works, and you should be a subject matter expert at that project because you built it. So, recording a demo of why you built that project, how you built it, the functionality, all the things that incorporates a full stack mindset from front end fundamentals to back end fundamentals is going to help you tremendously when it comes to the job market. So focus on that. Also, make sure that your projects are secure. Okay. Make sure that they're up to date because if a recruiter was to go onto your portfolio and click on one of those projects and there's a security issue, that's an immediate disqualification, bro. So don't do that. All right. Make sure you understand basic security so that you don't run into any issues or be compromised in that case. And once you have your portfolio website out there and everything's all good, have your resume updated with the skills that you've learned based on this roadmap and what you accomplished. And once you do that, you should be fine. Like this is as simple as it gets. It doesn't have to be too complicated, but you just need to understand exactly what skills you need to add to your tool belt to become full stack. These are the fundamentals that will help you get there. But understanding the terminology and all that stuff is only part of the battle. You have to actually build these things out. So start figuring out what kind of projects you want to build that is full stack focused. Start with the front end first, make sure that's good. Understand the back end, understand how to connect that to your front end, and then just go to town and use whatever fundamentals you use for project one, for project two, so on and so forth, and keep iterating and building. All right. So once you do that, if you need me personally to look at your portfolio, if you want to do coding interviews, mock interviews, just to prep you for any interviews that you have coming up for the year, click the link in the description to book some time with me. It's at least 15 minutes we could spend on a call. If you need more time, I'll send you an additional link where we could go through everything and we'll get you prepped and ready for job hunt and whatever you need to do to become a full stack engineer. But this is all it takes, guys. It's very simple. This is what I did to become full stack. Over the years of programming and figuring things out, I first started as a web developer. I was building out websites, doing SEO optimization, making sure that the website is ranking on different keywords on Google in different search engines. Then once I got bored with that, I wanted to do something with software engineering. So I became a front end React developer, dealt with all that stuff, understood state management, understood the concepts of TypeScript and all that, and then branching strategy, Git, and it took a while to do all that stuff, but it's just practice. You got to just keep practicing. Also, back end architecture. I would say right now I'm more of like the back end workflow guy. So I love dealing with this stuff as opposed to this stuff because I've done it for years. Okay, I've been in 12 years in the game. This is all I would do. All the front end stuff that you see here, this is all I would do. Now I'm more about like the business logic, the workflows. How do we automate a lot of things so that data comes and goes, right? It comes in a certain way, we process it, and then we store it in a certain way or we update it. That's what I care about. That's what my mindset is now. And then also these different tools that can help me with processing all that data and figuring things out. So this roadmap will help you through the test of time. It will help you with whatever phase in your life is as a developer. You might be front end focused for now, right? You might be just front end focused, but then you might like the back end more, right? Or you might like both. It depends on your preference. Maybe you don't even like these anymore. You just like to be, cloud and DevOps. You like these tools, setting these tools up, understanding how they work, and you know, dealing with the architecture of things. And a lot of people go that route. But having these fundamentals is going to help you tremendously. All right. This is the bread and butter of everything. I will add a link to this diagram so that you can easily reference this for your journey to becoming full stack. If you have any questions, you could reach out to me at thefullstackbro@gmail.com. And that's the video, guys. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Let me know if you like content like this, then I could always start showing you guys different things. And if there's any topics that you want me to talk about, put that in the comments. And let me know if this was actually beneficial for you guys. All right. We'll talk soon.